the Spiritual Workshop with Cat Edwards.
Live from CatEdwardsClairvoyant.com.
Exclusively on A1R.
Ask One Radio Network.
Welcome back to the Spiritual Workshop here on A1R Radio. It's the 9th of December 2011 at 3:30 p.m. on a lovely mild Friday afternoon here in Brisbane, Australia, and the temperature is 25 degrees centigrade or 77 degrees Fahrenheit. Today's special guest is a multi-talented creative intuitive specializing in remote viewing. He's enjoyed success as a singer-songwriter in the 1960s and 70s before moving into the psychic industry. In 1983, he began the Australian Psychics Association, which has now become a leading industry body in Australia and of which he resides as president. He also heads up the International Psychics Association. He is an author of 3 books and is a contributing writer to many Australian and international magazines, as well as an editor of a book by Uri Geller. He is considered an expert in the field of remote viewing, and having delivered a paper in the 2004 Las Vegas International Remote Viewing Conference, and he has appeared in countless times on television and radio. With over 30 years of experience as a professional psychic, he is now mentoring others in the field and is working as an advisor to a television channel here in Australia. Who is this person with such a stellar career in the psychic industry? Please welcome Mr. Simon Turnbull to the Spiritual Workshop.
How are you going, Kat?
I'm great, thanks, Simon. How are you?
Good. Yeah, we finally got this technology working.
Oh, yes, it's a bit of a tricky one, the old Skype. You're coming to us from Sydney for all those listeners who are interested to know. Before you became a professional psychic, what was your experience of spirituality? Was there any standout moments for you?
Well, my grandmother, who used to live in St. Petersburg just before the revolution, my great grandfather, her father was bodyguard of the Tsar of Russia, and Rasputin used to turn up at the palace the Alexander Palace that they used to have him turn up, and I heard a lot of stories from her about his visits, and she once met him in the local hospital because he was interested in, of course, purely for educational reasons, in some of the nurses there.
Of course. What made you decide to change careers? I think you're possibly more famous for being a psychic than you were for being a musician.
Well, there wasn't much money in music. It was a simple answer to that one. The thing is that I guess when I went to a spiritualist church and I get started there, I went to a psychic actually in the first place back in 1970, so about 41 years ago. And the psychic told me that I was involved with 2 women who had the same name, which actually turned out to be correct. They were both called Rhonda, one of whom I subsequently married. And he was so accurate, I didn't know how he did it. I said, could you stop the reading now and maybe spend the rest of the time I've got left with teaching me how to do it, which he did. So as I sort of started to... he was an ex-Catholic priest as well, which made it all the more interesting. He left the priesthood and got married, and he was regarded as one of the best psychics in Australia at that time. I think Brian Zademski was his name, Polish. And he charged top dollar, too. It was about $3, I think it was.
Wow. That's really interesting, and I know that Catholics do have some spiritual understanding. Everyone will know about the movie The Exorcist, of course, but there's certainly a definite spiritual understanding there with the Catholics. But you created the Australian Psychics Association in 1983. Can you tell the listeners about this industry body and why it is such an important organisation?
Well, back in 1983, around that time, a lot of media psychics at that time who wrote for different newspapers, magazines, and so on, thought it might be a good idea if we all banded together so that we could provide, the right kind of information to media inquiries that came from other newspapers and so forth. So we collected all the psychics we could find under the local tree in the park, and away we went. And it's sort of grown from there. We've got about 1,600 people, including our associate members. The rest are professional members. There wasn't anything like that anywhere else in the world. There were a lot of groups in different countries like US and UK, but they were kind of isolated from each other, and we wanted something that would bring everybody together so that they could build up some credibility, and that's in fact how we did it. So despite the fact that skeptics have done their best to kind of rubbish what we do, we know that scientists like Dean Radin at the Noetic Institute and Skip Atwater at Monroe Institute, they're doing a lot of important research, and the research shows that there's something happening.
I've always wanted to see MRI scan of the brain when you're using your psychic part of the brain. I'd really be interested to have a look at actually the scientific medical information about that. I think it'd be really, really interesting. But now you've moved into television with an advisory role for Australia's Channel 7 on the psychic TV show The One. What benefits do you see this show has brought to the association and to you indeed personally? Professionally, sorry.
Yeah, well, both. Really, when we started work, the last 20 years I've been trying to sell a TV show on psychics, to anyone who would listen. But finally, Fox did listen. In fact, they rang us for us to help them start the show. But it took a lot of convincing because they had to. They wanted to know that they weren't going to end up with psychic egg on their face. So, we had to sort of do a lot of convincing that we had the talent to do it. So this was back in 2008. And so the show was made and sold to 7 Network here in Australia and presented for 5 weeks just before the Olympics. And it was a huge hit, 1.5 million, which is the equivalent of 17 million in the States, per capita. So it was a huge hit, but it took them another 3 years for them to put the show on again because I guess they had cold feet, or maybe they didn't really believe the original success. But finally this year they did it again, and it had slightly less ratings because less people are watching free-to-air in Australia, more people watching cable and sort of internet stuff. So, but it was still a hit. So the thing is that it affected. The public really loved it because it showed that psychics, especially the winner, Greg Riley, who found a body in the back of a car in a car park with 52 cars in it in 10 minutes. That's not too bad, is it?
That's wonderful.
Sorry?
I said that's wonderful.
Yeah, it is. And that just shows that it's possible. I mean, there are lots of examples of this kind of thing. And whilst they had a token skeptic on the show, he was pretty monosyllabic, as far as what he kept repeating himself, saying, it's unbelievable, it can't be done, it's just a luck chance, and so on. But it's shown, and this is what the whole purpose of it was to show that it was possible, and that it was genuine, and that the people, there are talented people like that all over the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you can, listeners, I'd encourage you to have a look at episodes of The One on the internet by going to www.au.tv.yahoo.com/+7/the-1. And you can also learn more about Simon by going to his website at www.simonturnbull.com. And you can also find Simon on Facebook at Simon Turnbull, the public figure. And of course, I'll be posting all of that information on my Facebook fan page after the show, so don't worry if you missed that. Simon, thank you for coming on the show. I think it's important for people who are wanting to have a career in this industry to know that it is possible to make it, and it is possible to have a full and exciting life being a professional psychic. Would you give the callers and I the honour of staying with us to give us some tag team readings with me while we finish up the show?
Sure, no problem.
That'd be absolutely sensational. So we're heading off now to speak to Andrea in San Bernardino, Bernardino, California. Hi, Andrea. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. I hope you don't mind, but our special guest Simon Turnbull would also like to help with the reading. What's your special question, please?
I would just like to have a reading. Anything you can think of, I guess. I didn't have a question, really. Just wondering maybe as far as my career, how about that?
Simon, what do you pick up on?
Well, one of the statements I can see here is that she's she's where she wants to make a commitment in a particular career direction, but perhaps is a little bit, she's gone through recently a really rough trot trying to get that to happen. The victory that she wants, especially any area to do with combination of law and health, will work out for her. And I can certainly see that she's going to be much happier if she follows that. But she's got to make the commitment. She's somehow held back from making the commitment that she needs. How many more minutes do you want me to go?
Oh, just till you're ready. We do have one other caller coming up, but let Andrea have her a little bit of time. What else do you see for her?
Well, there's going to be a discussion towards the end of December, early January. There's a new person coming into her life who's going to help her with making some plans, some definite plans. But she's got to, the key issue up to now is the fact that she needs to make a commitment. And also on the emotional level, where I can see there's sort of a difficulty in reaching agreements that she wants, that's going to sort itself out the end of December, early January. So it's kind of a lot happening. I can see her ending one cycle and starting a new one, but she's got to wait for those plans to ripen by the end of February. So February is the key month overall.
February. Okay.
Yeah. I can also see that there's a little bit of travel for you coming up in 2012, and I can see you around islands in the sun. So don't know if there's any islands off of California, but I can certainly see islands in the sun for you. So I hope that advice helps. It's time for us to move on. Thanks very much, Andrea. It's time to speak to Dee in British Columbia, Canada. Hi, Dee. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm awesome. What's your question for us? Thank you.
First, I wanted to validate a prediction you gave me last month. I asked you about a court. I filed for a court hearing, and I asked when it was going to be presented in front of the judges, and you said soon, and it happened in 2 weeks. So I just wanted to let you know. My question is, I started a new job. I'm just wondering if you could tell me how long it was going to last. I'm hoping a year at least.
Okay, Simon, what do you get about her new job?
Well, it's talking here about some area. There's two areas that come up. One is related to the premises that she might be working in, whether that's related to education or the government. But either way, it shows that she's going to organize her situation again by the end of December. That looks fairly positive. But her key month is also around the February-March period in her case, so she's got to be patient. At the moment, she's doing the best she can. She's got to. It's really not up to her. It's up to other parties meeting her halfway. So, but from a career perspective, and especially in relation to the question of her wanting to maintain a sense of caution, I can see her working things out career-wise pretty well. The second half of next year is when that's going to fall into place more strongly for her. So, and because I can see a partnership issue also playing a role, and this is partly in relation. This could be relation to her own partnership. That shows that the key months in the second half of the year is around July, August. So all she needs to do now is focus on what can go right rather than what can go wrong, because she's got a very strong sense of visualization, and what she focuses on in her mind usually happens. So if she focuses on the good stuff, then the good stuff will happen. If you focus on what can go wrong, then you can create the negative things to happen. Do you understand?
Yes.
Good. But there is a new job, either with this job you're already doing or something brand new around June. So you're going to have to be patient and wait. No matter what's happening to you now, that there's something much more solid for you in June next year.
I was getting something similar.
Yeah, money back guaranteed.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Simon there. I think that there is something bigger and better coming for you next year. And I was getting like a rollover into a promotion. So I tend to agree with Simon on that one. I think that you're going to do well come the second half of next year. And also, I also agree that you have a very powerful mind and very, very strong ability to manifest. So keep your head positive, Dee. And thank you very much for calling in.
Okay, thank you, Kat. Thank you, Simon.
Welcome.
And it's time to move on now to Janine in Pennsylvania. Hi, Janine. How can we help you?
Hi, is this Kat?
Yeah.
Oh, hi. I haven't met you. How are you?
I'm awesome, thanks. How are you?
I'm okay. I mean, I've called the show a few times, but you're one of the people there that I haven't spoken with yet. Hi.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, there's a few of the few radio hosts here on A1R Network. That's because we're the home of the best psychics in the world. So what can we do for you today?
Well, if you and Simon are able to look at the situation that's going on between my husband and I would appreciate that.
Okay, Simon, what do you get there?
Well, this particular lady, I can see she's handling a situation on her own, and in some ways she's quite happy with that. But, well, you're better off on your own, it says, basically. Now, that means that you need to deal with the issue of being on your own. I don't mean lonely, by the way. I mean just focusing on your own space, doing your own thing. Now, I can see that there's a mental health issue around this. I know you haven't said anything to me, but I can see that there is a mental health issue, a lot of stress. Now, that stress is going to be resolved, but you need to wait till next year, early next year in your case. The best thing to do with this particular issue is going to be resolved by the end of January. So January is probably the best month for you to make progress. Now, the other thing I can see around your husband is
he has bipolar. When you said mental health issue, I was like, wow, he does. Yeah.
There you go. So now, because it says that this mental health issue is not untreatable, but obviously, bipolar condition is really about adjustment and finding the right medication. Of course, I'm not a doctor and I can't give medical advice, but that's the reason why this mental health issue can't be resolved. You are not responsible. Do you understand? So obviously,
you saying that. I know.
Yeah. So you've got to not put it on yourself. You really need some space for yourself, and that's going to happen. But it's going to take you until the end of next year to really sort out the best way of doing that, so that everyone can be happy.
Well, it's been a year that he's been half in and half out with our marriage because he had a bad, let's call it an episode, last October, which in November he moved out, and now he's like, he comes and he goes, and he comes and he goes, and he's been getting into trouble and having a lot of issues. And lately he's coming around more, which feels good, and he's being more affectionate and seems in a better place. And I was hoping that would be like continuing, and that, okay, maybe he's going to be home now, because every time he comes, I think he's going to stay, and then he goes again.
Yeah, well, this is something you've got to... It's saying, when I say spending time on your own, I don't mean abandoning him or the relationship, but you cannot be held responsible for that. You know what I mean? So it's up to him.
I tried to help,
Of course, and it's up to him now not to earn the right to be with you, but to get into the place where he can be with you. And that's the thing that's going to take till the end of next year to sort out.
Oh,
now, it says you've done everything you can. It's really, sad to say, it's really up to him to meet you halfway. Now, bipolar. The good thing about bipolar people is that they do have a balanced period in their monthly cycle. Sometimes it's a monthly, sometimes it's a tri-cycle, 3-monthly cycle. So they that's why they're bipolar. They go from one end of the extreme to the other. But there is a balance point, and it's at that balance point that. He needs to acknowledge the fact that you're, having to put up with this. And,
right.
And
well,
this
he knows.
Is
he thinks he's doing me a favor staying away.
Well, he is when he's going, because you really need some space. It says so here. So,
wow.
You've done the best you can under the current conditions. So let him sort of come to you. That's the best way to deal with it. Don't try to fix it for him in any way.
I'm not.
Yep. Good.
Okay, Janine, I'm sorry to cut you off there, but you can always connect with Simon for a full reading after the show. We do have to move on to Nathaniel in Orange County, California. Hi, Nathaniel. Just we have only 5 minutes left in the show, so can you make it a very quick question? Thank you.
Yes, I wonder if you see a move or a new job or something. I don't know what month or what kind of job it might be or something like that. I'm kind of looking. See something.
Okay. What do you get there from Nathaniel, Simon?
Well, for Nathaniel, I can see that probably the best thing, he's been I can see recent travel being looked at, and travel being a part of the process. And I really feel that that's going to work out the best for him. At the moment, the timing, he's not going to suffer loss. In other words, or Nathan, you're not going to suffer loss. The thing really, though, is that you need to be patient for a little while longer. Your financial picture is going to be much, much stronger over the next 3 years. But next year, around the March period, issues to do with banks, financial institutions are going to stabilize. And no matter how you might be concerned in relation to your financial position, you're not going to suffer major loss. Do you understand?
Okay.
So
awesome.
At the moment, it's really about you hanging in there for the kind of support perhaps you need to make the change. And that's around the February-March period next year.
Okay, Nathaniel, thanks for calling in. That's all we have time for. Sorry that we can't get any more. If you want to connect with Simon, make sure that you go to www.simonturnbull.com to book in for a private session with him. As you can tell, he's a brilliant reader, and I would highly recommend him to anyone. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Spiritual Workshop, Simon Turnbull. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much for having me, Kat.
And thank you to the listeners and the callers today. We had Anastasia in Canada, Nancy in Florida, Naomi in New York, Andrew in California, Dee, British Columbia, Canada, Janine in Pennsylvania, and Nathaniel in California. And join us next week on the Spiritual Workshop for more interesting special guests, free readings, and spiritual comments. Thursday night, midnight, USA Eastern Standard Time, 11 p.m. Central, 10 p.m. Mountain, 9 p.m. Western Time, 3 p.m. here in Australia, Brisbane time, and 4 p.m. in Daylight Savings Time, Eastern Standard Time. Okay, thank you so much for joining us here on the Spiritual Workshop. Please connect with me after the show on Facebook and my fan page for Cat Edwards Clairvoyant, cat with a C, like the cat, meow meow, and become my friend at Cat Edwards. And also book with me for a private session today, because my mornings are your afternoons and evenings. So come home after work and have a private session with me. You can book in at catedwardsclairvoyant.com. Get involved with me in the discussions about my blogs, and get all the links to my social networking sites there. Nice to be with you. Lovely to talk to you. See you next week on the Spiritual Workshop. I'm Cat Edwards here on A1R Radio, the home of the best psychics in the world.